What's going on, Mr. Markham? How you doing today, man?
Doing well, thank you, Jorge. It's been a very whirlwindy past couple. I gotta tell you here, and I know you know me with the crossover between baseball and football, but it is.
Yeah.
Is there a better time potentially in sports? And there might be one, but right now, I mean, March Madness, baseball season's kicking off. NFL never has an off season, but free agency kicked off, and so now it's even more chaotic. Yeah, I'm missing something, I'm sure.
No, I gotta be honest with you. And as much as we talk about football and we like, professional football and college football, for me, I will always have my default setting in like playoff basketball mode. So we're basically doing that, for 64 teams. Uh, and it is ridiculous. Did you watch the Kentucky upset yesterday?
I did.
That was ridiculous. That was nuts. But to go back to what you were saying, dude, this is a great time of year. Aside from the fall when you have all the major sports playing in that 1 or 2 week period, this is fantastic. But we have the news, we have the drama for NFL and baseball, and then baseball supposedly is going to be starting up sooner rather than later. Are the canceled games not canceled anymore, or
they have a full 162 game season? They're going to do 9 inning double headers to make those games up. Opening day is April 7th. Okay. And so we've got, I mean, it's 3 weeks away. I mean, it's starting up. It's fun. It's ready. It's ready. I'm ready. It's fun. I can't talk. My mind is everywhere. Every 2 seconds, you should feel like in my pocket. If I keep my phone in my pocket, it is on a continuous. I should take off some of those alerts and push notifications. I'm sure, but constant, just and used to be who did what. Oh, great! Look, Tutu Atwell signs with this or some. I shouldn't say garbage player and throw Tutu Atwell into the mix, but we get the idea of what I'm saying. And instead, it's. Deshaun Watson changes his mind and decides, I'll go play here. And
right.
We obviously not segue into which direction you were going to go, but I'll let you do that. But it's been, big news.
And first of all, to all you out there who are watching and listening, welcome to Fourth and Frames, flagship podcast here at fantasyandframes.com. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. And with me is Nate Markham. And today we're going to be covering the Dynasty Risers and Fallers at defensive back. But it's a special show because we're doing this on a Friday at 10 p.m., which means, after 10 p.m., anything can happen, and we're going to go as long as we want because we can. Yep, and exactly. So we'll cover some IDP defensive backs. Obviously, we're talking about it from a Dynasty perspective. And then we're going to get into everything else. And then if you all have any questions or you want to hop on the stream with us, let me know, and I'll email you the information, and we could all just have a good time talking shop here this Friday evening.
Ooh.
Nate, I don't know who you have like on your alerts on Twitter, but for me, people have Schefter, people have, Pelissaro, that people have Rappaport. I've been using at my sports update, R.A. Mirov.
Yeah.
This guy is legit, like one of the fastest breaking news people in all of fantasy football Twitter. So he's definitely somebody I wanted to give a shout out to because I've been loving everything he's been doing. He covers NFL for Pro Football Focus. Just a lot of good stuff going on for him. So congratulations and thank you, Ari, for having such a great start to NFL free agency. Speaking of NFL free agency, there are a lot of moves. We can talk about a defense during the defensive portion of the show, but I think Devonta Adams going to the Raiders. And what kills me is the whole fact that apparently Green Bay was going to pay him more money. And he's like, no, I'm good. I want to go to Las Vegas. And I'm like, really? You want to leave? But I can see where it's going. I can kind of see his rationale. Maybe he got tired of the drama in Green Bay. Maybe he didn't want to be stuck on a team that was going to underperform because they're in cap hell if they did keep him and Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. Maybe he really does want to play with Derek Carr. I refuse to believe. Yeah, thank you. I refuse to believe that is actually like a thing. Like I get he's his buddy from college, but you're turning down a 2-time back-to-back, MVP for Derek Carr. Like I don't get
I think you hit it on the head. I think it's the lack of drama and being just intertwined into it constantly. And the cap hell obviously will play into it. But I do think that there's something about just, going out and doing your job without the hassle and just angst of every day, not knowing what's going to be said, what type of shit do I have to deal with. I'm not saying he won't get that in Vegas potentially. I mean, but I don't believe that that's going to be the case. And where does it go? AFC West. If you could only purchase, if you got a deal on the NFL Red Zone to only buy a division, right, I would spend as much for the AFC West as I would for everything else almost combined. Not just because my Chiefs play in it, but because it is, loaded. It's basically the All-Star. No, shouldn't say All-Star. Pro Bowl-esque.
Right.
Who's who in that division.
I will say this right now. If somebody in December shows me their final roster of them winning a fantasy football championship with only players from the AFC West, which I think is very possible of doing, yep, I will donate $100 to your charity. Because Russell Wilson, all those people, Javonte Williams, no Melvin Gordon anymore, Sutton, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Russell Wilson. I mean, the thing is, it was a big offensive snowball, in recent weeks. But then the defenses started getting there. Khalil Mack is now all of a sudden in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chandler Jones, who he just has never gotten the respect he's been deserving of. He's always been, whenever he's played a full season, in the top 10 in terms of sacks. Just a monster of a player, great player, goes to Las Vegas, and that's kind of flown under the radar again.
Yeah, it has.
And it's dude, this guy is going to wreck it. And you have Max Crosby on the other side now. You have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones coming at you. That's ridiculous. And then just when you thought the Raiders were the team that were lacking the most firepower, boom. Yeah, exactly. And I think I saw on Twitter, somebody said, name me a better wide receiver tight end tandem than Devontae Adams and Darren Waller.
I got one.
Oh yeah, obviously.
But I guess you can say experts don't count. Real quick though, not to go from high note to low note. Sure. Breaking news right now. John Clayton, NFL reporter, insider, has passed away. So terrible news. I think, there's probably a lot more that people will say about it and bring on. I can remember plenty of days. And I'm drawing a blank. I was getting ready to look it up and everything else. Who was the old player that they used to have them together and they would battle their debates essentially? And he kept calling Clayton a little dweeb and everything for not ever playing.
Oh man, this is going to eat me alive. If somebody's watching on Twitter who knows this ESPN trivia, Sports Center trivia, chime in, please. Man, who is that guy?
I have the internet, so I can just do this.
I guess Google could help out. Yeah, no. Nothing will obviously beat his he takes off his garb after he does the live Sports Center, and he has. What was the band that he had? I forget. The band he had on this T-shirt, and he starts rocking out to them. It's Slayer.
Yeah.
Just yeah, Meatloaf. Yeah,
this is essentially what I think of. Yeah.
Man, he was just such a good staple of sports reporting. I mean,
I trusted everything he said. If he told you the sky was orange, no, let's go a different color because sky can't be orange. The sky was a purple. And the clouds were magenta and the sun didn't exist, I would be like, man, that's John Clayton. I got to go outside and check just in case.
I mean, the most professional guy you've ever seen consistently on a TV, giving you sports information. Nate, this is the guy that we grew up with. This is what Sports Center was revolving around back in the day. These are the heart and soul of
was
them.
It Sean Salisbury?
He was I think he was an anchor. I don't know if he was the quote unquote player who did that.
Well, that's
It sounds like something. I know it's not him, but it sounds like something like a Rex Ryan would say, or something along those lines. But
no, it's definitely like it doesn't matter. We'll continue.
We'll figure it out. But yeah, no, I saw that today. That really bummed me out. It's yeah, it sucks. So rest in peace, John Clayton. Cheers to you, and I hope your condolences go out to your family and loved ones. I guess sticking on a similar feel, and normally would not get into this because I totally like to avoid drama whatsoever when we're doing our content here. But like I said, it's 10 p.m. We're going to do whatever we want to do.
Yeah, Drama Friday.
Deshaun Watson going to Cleveland.
Moly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's of all the landing spots, if you're Deshaun Watson, that had to be, I mean, it has to be the top of the list. I mean, would you rather, Atlanta or Cleveland? Cleveland, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like Atlanta, I get it.
Take it back. There's one. I would have picked Carolina over Cleveland myself. But that's just me because I think that I would, that just seems like I don't want to say Cleveland worries me after what we've seen. Put it this way. In the last 2 years, we've seen them make this, momentous turnaround. They went from this, 1-35. I know that's not the right number, but you get the idea of what I'm saying, to this perennial, I'd say Super Bowl contending team, to go into so much drama that Baker Mayfield wants out, and they just are the kind of, their own fans are turning a little bit, and there's a little bit of a shit show. I'm not saying that's not the same in Carolina, potentially, but maybe it's my own personal bias. Maybe I just enjoy Carolina. I like the pieces they have. I think their defense is great. Obviously, DJ Moore got extended today. Yeah, you have CMC, but what would it take to get Deshaun Watson there? And they don't. What was it? 3 firsts, third,
3 firsts, 3 firsts, a third, and a fifth for Watson, and a fourth, I think. And I got to be honest with you, people are like, "Oh my god, that's such a haul." And I'm like, honestly, for the way the Texans were talking about this last year, I'm surprised they didn't hold out for like 4 first-round picks or more than that. I was expecting a lot more than what I saw when I heard what they gave up. I'm like, "Oh, is that it? Oh, okay. Really? We were holding with bated breath this entire time just to see that? I don't know. That's just my take there. But he's a Brown, and you see on Twitter the mass exodus of Browns fans who don't want to be associated with the Browns because of the Deshaun Watson signing and everything that he's accused of doing. It is very rare, Nate, especially nowadays, where I go and say, "Whew, well, I'm glad I'm a Commanders fan."
Exactly.
This is This is one of those scenarios.
March 18th. Jorge is drunk. Said some shit.
Jorge is drunk, and he thought that Carson Wentz's outfit to the press conference was very, very stylish. If you saw that,
everybody saw it.
You didn't have to look at your computer screen; just look outside. No. It was emanating all the way from.
That's what John Clayton was looking at when he said the sky was maroon. And real quick question: what do you think? What will the Colts give up to get Baker Mayfield?
First of all, I hope he goes there. I really hope he does. What would they give up? They
have no the Browns have no leverage right now, right? I mean, they not for. I don't think the team is, if they were in desperation mode to try to get something in return. I think now they'll just hold tight. They don't have to they don't have to honor his wishes. And what's the chances? I saw this. What's the chance that maybe Deshaun Watson is suspended from NFL, and they have Baker Mayfield to play the first 4 or 5 games, whatever that may be. Now, granted, that's another hot take that I've seen somewhere else, so it's not just my thinking on this.
Right.
But would Baker even? I can't see a situation that he would. I don't know what would happen.
I see him sitting out or boycotting or whatever he wants, whatever you call it, just not playing again for Cleveland. A lot of drama going on there in Cleveland. I don't really know why that is, but on paper, taking the legal stuff out of it, taking all the emotion that comes with the legal stuff out of it, You know, you have Deshaun Watson at his very best. You have Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb at their very best. You have David Njoku, who, you know, people are ranting and raving about him from a dynasty perspective, but I've yet to see him actually go off. He will have the opportunity now because no more Austin Hooper there taking away snaps from him.
Right.
But you got Amari Cooper. I totally forgot about Amari Cooper. You have Amari Cooper there now. So it's, you know, there's a lot of potential there. The defense, you know, a lot of youth on that defensive side of the ball, especially at linebacker with Koromoa, and then you got all the former Rams who basically went to the secondary of John Johnson III and so on and so forth.
Just having Troy Myles Garrett enough is,
yeah.
I mean,
it's pretty it's pretty crazy how good that team is stacked. But like you said, there's so many things we still don't know what's going to happen, you know, with the NFL levying, you know, suspensions and all that jazz. So
right.
Glad I'm a Commanders fan. And speaking of Commanders fans, we got JD McKissick back, and apparently that pissed off is it Brandon Bean, something Bean, who's the general manager of the Buffalo Bills. Apparently he's like, you know what, Washington, you know, we're generally, when you talk to a player and you say it's a done deal, the agent says, okay, we're done. And Washington still, you know, was going after JD McKissick, and now he's back with Washington. What are your thoughts on that with Antonio Gibson?
I mean, I hate it for any Antonio Gibson owners. I mean, obviously the opportunity, the seas kind of parted. Everybody thought this full workload for Antonio Gibson was just going to create he had to move up into the top first half of the first round with a lone backfield by himself, I would think. I mean, with the potential. And now all of a sudden, I'm not so worried as much, because I still think, you know, I take that back though. Maybe I am worried, because there's no reason they pushed that hard for McKissick if they didn't intend to give him a consistent workload that they had given him, or had wanted to give him, at least for the last couple of years. So, I mean, you know, I hate to say follow the money, because follow the money sometimes gets you in trouble, but you got to follow the commitment to him. Mm-hmm. And it's not like they have a ton of options behind him either. I mean, Jarrett Patterson, Reggie Bonifant. I mean, come on. It's not like they had anything. Right. I guess Jonathan Williams is still there, and they could address it in the draft, but the depth is there. What do we think as far as the overall offense for the Commanders with the addition of Carson Wentz? How much higher is Terry McLaurin going to go in your overall? Because, I mean, I know we've talked about this before, and I haven't, though.
Yeah, no. I don't really see it getting. Well, I should take that back. From a fantasy standpoint, I don't think it's going to change that much. From an advanced metric standpoint, I think it's going to change a lot, which has nothing to do with fantasy points. So let me give you an example of what I mean. Targets are probably going to stay the same, if not go up a little bit more. But teams are going to realize that they're going to be throwing it to Terry McLaurin all the time, and they're going to take that away eventually. That being said, his average depth of target, it's going to go through the roof, because Carson Wentz is going to air that sucker out. But that doesn't translate into fantasy points. So from a real football perspective, I think it bumps him up a little bit more. But there's no balance on this team. You know, you look at who's the other guy, Cam Sims and Curtis Samuel, who can't even stay on the field for an entire season. Not super excited about that. You know, JD McKissick and Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson, I think, finished in the top 12 or top 13 in total fantasy points scored. But you look at his point per game average, it's not that great either. So it is a tough situation there. Carson Wentz, I mean, I hope he can revitalize what he did in 2018, when he almost led his team to a Super Bowl. But everything I've been hearing out of everywhere is like, oh, he's a horrible leader. He's, you know, when he tore his ACL in Philadelphia, apparently him and Darren Sproles got into it because Carson Wentz was saying in the treatment room, oh, it doesn't feel right that Nick Foles is leading my team to the Super Bowl. It should be me doing that, not him. And Darren Sproles basically had to be separated from Carson Wentz because they were about to go at it pretty hardcore. I hear this and I'm like, well, this is the person I want leading our team.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see, man. You know, I was watching the the social media page for Washington, and they showed when Carson Wentz showed up to the facility and he met Ron Rivera. And Rivera's like, "Hey man, how's it going? Super upbeat, super ready to take on this new endeavor." And Carson Wentz is like, "Hey, what's up?" And Rivera's like, "Hey, how's the family? How's the wife doing?" He's like, yeah, pretty good. He's like, "Yeah, this past 48 hours has been kind of something." Carson Wentz is like, yeah, I guess that's part of the business. And I'm just like, there's nothing that he has done in this entire 5 minutes of meeting his head coach that screams to me, yes, I'm ready to say, screw what happened in the past. I'm ready to go take the league by storm again. I don't know if I can take my disappointment enough to answer your question.
He is still the best quarterback that you guys have had in I don't know how long I want to go back. It's not probably fair for me to assume.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Kirk Cousins or Carson Wentz? Because that's the last quarterback that we had that was somewhat that was decent.
Yeah, I'd rather have Kirk Cousins myself. Right. But I don't know, because Amari Cooper says that Dak is the black Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
I'm so confused by that statement. Yeah. I'm like, what? He throws for a ton of yards and
touchdowns,
I know what it is. It means he doesn't win championships,
right.
And he puts up a bunch of numbers. But I mean, that's kind of like, I'll take the insult if that's what it is that I produce. And
right.
There is another side to football, from what I understand. I believe it's called defense, that you and I might know a little bit about. So maybe it's not as quite a knock if you do that. But
yeah,
I don't know.
No, I'm with you. And when you think of Amari Cooper going to Cleveland and Deshaun Watson is this quarterback now, you think that's gonna be anything special to see, or?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I do. I like Amari Cooper. I think Amari Cooper is a type of receiver that, realistically, in any scenario, can fit into a receiver's room and have immediate return, because he's not like dependent upon a good deep a good deep ball by the quarterback, or exclusive to play calling where he has to get open in space to be able to do things. He can create. Right. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of how he does. I think the change in the overall offensive scheme might be different, tempo wise. That might get a little, sometimes dull. It's a little dulling. I'm sure that the play action run heavy attack, even though it's not like Dallas wasn't a pretty decent or potent rushing attack anyway. It's not like they were completely pass heavy, but they were by comparison. I'd have to look it up and see the exact numbers, but my guess is that the run to pass ratio and just the total pass snaps, tempo will be slower. Like I said, tempo will be down. I think the overall potential volume, but he doesn't have to compete with CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup. Well, what was supposed to be Michael Gallup, I guess we'll say, considering Gallup didn't really play too much, unfortunately.
Well, fortunately, he got that extension, so I'm super happy for him.
That's
super. Being a Gallup truther, it's been tough the past couple of years, but it's finally happening, man. It's finally happening. So speaking of finally happening, I think we should probably get to talking about some defense here before we go completely. Yeah. Let's get into Dynasty Risers and Fallers at defensive back. I wrote in my article for the Dynasty Risers, Nate, defensive back is slowly becoming my favorite position in all of IDP. And you would think it'd be like the hard-hitting linebackers or the getting to the quarterback, pile driving them into the ground defensive linemen. But you look at these defensive backs, I mean, they're being asked to do so much, whether it's coverage, whether it's playing at closer to the line of scrimmage, getting the quarterback pressures, getting the line, it's just so much, so many options, so much variety.
Well, let's imagine the size of these defensive backs now is not all of them, but they range in variety. They have the speed of a lot of the corners. They have the physicality of a linebacker. They have a playmaking set and ability to be in the box more than they've ever been, and just asked to run downhill. And with, like we've said, There's not the traditional 3-4-4-3. Most everything's nickel. Seeing hybrid dimes. We're seeing a lot more of the safety role in the box, and it's just they're involved in so much more of the game. They're becoming more household names, which is nice. I got to say, I think that it's very intriguing, and we even see some like quote unquote down years for some players, like a Jeremy Chin. When at the end of the day, when you look at the end numbers, you go, oh. He actually did have a good year by all standards, but we're getting, I like the fact that there's some new guys coming in that are actually gaining like quickly. They're quickly getting in, and maybe I'll mention some of these when we talk about some of the risers more than the fallers, but the turnaround to go from rookie or second year guy to, I don't want to say stardom, but we can say that. I mean, IDP defensive back stardom, if you want to talk about that small niche area, but I'm right there with you. I think the edge rushers get all the sack praise, linebackers get all the tackle glory, and the safeties get the opportunity to just be nasty and just kind of do a little bit of everything. I love it. When I play Madden, I'll tell you, create your own player. You get to create Jorge Edwards. Number one, what's your number if you create yourself? You think too long, that means you don't have a set number.
82.
You only make your guy offense?
Be a tight end.
Boo.
But I understand where you're going with that. I probably should have said a defensive back number.
Probably should have started there. No, you don't say defensive back number, because don't lie to me. I'm asking you a genuine question.
It would be 82.
That's fair. That's cool. I mean, I'm always like 11 is my go-to number if I'm like a receiver or something. But on if I pick a player and I pick a position first, more so than the number, because the position predicates the number, I pick safety a ton. So much fun, because especially strong safety more so than free safety. I don't want to be back ball hawking the entire time.
Right.
That's stupid. I want to be up in the box and just, my guy's 6'6", 260, just crushing people downhill, all out blitz, constant. I'm not dropping back, but it's the best. Create yourself as a safety and just sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, I think back to who I would actually play in real life, and I'm the guy who, when he was younger, wanted to be the receiver, and they're like, no, you're too big. Go on the line. That's where you've been forced to go. So I have some love for the defensive linemen as well, but these defensive backs have been playing lights out. Now, for those who are playing in their IDP leagues, you may be saying to yourself, well, why am I going to be playing a defensive back in my IDP spots when linebackers get all the tackles? So what am I going to be doing with the defensive linemen in my spots? Because their metrics, their sacks, their quarterback hits, their pressures, all that don't amount to much. Well, that's why you're going to use our FIF IDP scoring here at Fantasy and Frames. It's our default scoring setting here. You go to fantasyandframes.com, you read all of our IDP articles, you will see the scoring settings there. We've posted them numerous times on Twitter. The preferred platform we recommend you using them on is Sleeper, because Sleeper has probably the most different metrics you can have to count fantasy points for, versus other platforms where you get kind of limited by what you can do, which ultimately limits the fantasy output that you have. And of course, the point values that we've assigned to each play makes it so that your defensive backs, your linebackers, your defensive linemen, in terms of fantasy point output, are all pretty comparable to one another. So now you can rationalize putting in, a Derwin James over a linebacker, or you could say, I want to put in a Max Crosby over a defensive back or a linebacker. And I'm just using these names hypothetically, just throwing them out there. So it definitely brings a lot more balance, and it brings a lot more balance to being comparable on offense. So head over to fantasyandframes.com, check out our FIF scoring settings here for IDP. And with that, let's get into players that are kind of on the rise here from a dynasty perspective. And let's start with your guy, Nate. We talked about him a lot this past season, in Arizona. Jalen Thompson. What do you got for us for Jalen Thompson?
I mean, every week I almost put him in the waiver wire article every single week, because each time I kept checking the percentage of rostered over at Fantasy Pros. Granted, it's never always perfect science, because even the best players are like 45%, but that's the nature of the beast. We get used to it. We just know, because you hear rumblings and talk, and we talked to others, and we got some really, really bright minds that we happen to have within our circle, which is wonderful because, you want those type of people. I don't want a bunch of dum-dums trying to tell me what to do, because, granted, it makes you seem smarter when you're a bunch of idiots, but by proxy, you want smart people. So as long as you're not the idiot amongst the smart people, which luckily we're not, you also want studs around, other studs, and that's what Jalen Thompson was. Buda Baker, Jalen Thompson, safety duo. I mentioned last year going into probably week 2 or 3. That actually was week 3, because week 1 he didn't start, or he started but he didn't really perform. Weeks 2 and 3, Jalen Thompson. He's a supplemental 5th round pick. Guy, just his first year, full year as a starter. You want to talk about splash? He superseded Buda Baker as the number 1 in that secondary, if you ask me. It took a little bit for him to get there, but man, you want to talk about a big year last year. So here's another thing about Jalen Thompson too. As a supplemental 5th round pick, one of the reasons he slipped is that 2019 season. I read this today, which is news to me. He took an over-the-counter supplement, so he lost a full season of eligibility in college at Washington State. Oh, so wow. I think that actually dropped him a little bit. It doesn't mean he was going to be a 1st-round pick or a 2nd-round pick potentially, and have this huge impact. But he kind of went untalked about, little unnoticed. Maybe somebody was talking about him. I wasn't paying any attention to him, but also didn't really do IDP back then. Now I do, and now I see that he, after in his first full season, 120 tackles, 79 solo, which was 4th most amongst all defensive backs, 7 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. He out-tackled Buda Baker last year. The thing with that, though, is we've talked about it forever. It's where he lines up in the situational. And if you look at like box snaps within the box where he's in, outside of being the free safety, Thompson 355 to Buda's 296. So he's in the box more. And Buda's relegated to more of that free safety role, which is not uncommon. We're not shocked by that. But by a staggering amount, nearly 300 free safety snaps for Buda versus the 168 for Thompson. And going into this year, same type of role. I don't expect the defense to get any worse. I think that the defense itself, they're going to have some missing pieces, obviously, we've talked to earlier, Chandler Jones and some others that'll be gone, but he'll have a bigger impact if you look at the overall tackle percent as a whole for the team. He already had a tackle percent last year of 12.3, or tackle rate, which is fantastic. To put that into comparison, Logan Ryan, who was one of the premier secondary, components, had an 11.7 tackle rate. So Jalen Thompson, I've talked enough about him. I could go on and on. I think when we're talking about Dynasty Risers, I still think he's just, I don't know, he's overlooked because of the fact that he has to line up next to Buda Baker consistently.
No, absolutely. And, one of the complaints about trying to assess value for a player in Dynasty when it comes to IDP is that there's no official way to draw comparisons to offensive players, which is again why we created FIF IDP scoring. So if you were playing in a half PPR league and you had Jalen Thompson and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, he's really producing well, but I'm deficient at wide receiver, for example, who is a comparable play that I could make in terms of like a trade, and then say, well, the rationale between me wanting that wide receiver for Jalen Thompson is because their fantasy output is relatively the same. Mm-hmm. Let me just give you some names of players that kind of equate to what Jalen Thompson's value was last year. You remember Cordell Patterson doing all the awesome things he did in fantasy last year? Mm-hmm. He would have been right up there with Cordell Patterson, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. I mean, these are like 100-plus target wide receivers with tons of upside. That's Jalen Thompson. And here's the thing. If that's where he's starting, okay, we're talking about being the DB10 in FIF IDP scoring. If that's his starting point, being the full season at strong safety, the sky's the limit. Like, his IDP value in Dynasty is totally rising. I totally agree with you right there. Speaking of Logan Ryan, we'll just quickly segue into him just really quickly. Let go by the New York Giants, picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, reuniting with Tom Brady for all those years that they were together in New England. And, no more Jordan Whitehead. He's now with the Jets, and it's I'm excited. I'm excited about this Tampa Bay secondary. They brought back Carlton Davis, and we all know how much we love Carlton Davis with his pass breakups and what he's able to do there. But let's not fool it. I don't care that Logan Ryan is 31 years old. This guy is still one of the best tacklers in all of football, and I say that all of football, meaning linebackers, meaning other safeties, meaning other defensive linemen. This guy gets the tackles, and he makes them. It makes them IDP relevant.
Yeah, and he falls along that same list with Tampa, in that there's a correlation between total man coverage snaps and overall tackle volume by secondary. And if you look at the top 10 of that grouping, where you take the total tackle leaders and then you see where they rank overall in man coverage snaps, and guess what? Where's Logan Ryan? He's second overall in total tackles, and again, he's in that top 25% of man coverage snaps, a la some of the other names that we might talk about. It's an under talked about, I'd say, comparison that I'm going to have to do a little bit more research this year to see, are there some players that are in that maybe left zone coverage schemes that are going to man coverage schemes, and what that impact could be on their overall tackle volume. Maybe that's something that we'll dive into at a later time to see how strong that correlation is and what that could mean for future success.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned talking about going from man coverage from zone coverage. And they tried to do that with Tracy Walker a couple seasons ago with the Detroit Lions, and that didn't really work out too well. Now, granted, last season is what I'm talking about. He was also suffering from shoulder and foot injuries, if memory serves me correctly. And, I put him in the Dynasty Risers has risen column for, a few reasons here. Normally when we talk about IDP defensive backs or just IDP players in general, efficiency is something that we hammer home to help support our arguments, because we want efficient players. We want people who we know are going to be on the football field. We don't want the Nate Garys of the world, Michael Bauer's favorite IDP Philadelphia Eagle linebacker. We don't want the Nate Garys of the world who are great for a couple weeks, but then they get pulled off the field because in real football, they play really poorly. That being said, when you look at the man missed tackle percentage when playing in man coverage, Tracy Walker just got awful, like not great at all. When you look at how he's played in zone coverage, though, his missed tackle percentage is only 4%. Like, that is really, really, really good. Compared to an overall missed tackle rate of 12.2%. That just tells you how really, really, really bad he is when playing in man coverage.
Right.
This guy, the tackles and coverage are there. He's on the Lions. The Lions are going to be a poor team for a long time, folks.
Hey.
And they're going to be thrown on. And Tracy Walker, when he plays in coverage, he gets there. He gets you the solo tackles in coverage. It's all about him playing in coverage and opportunity. And, some people might say, well, if he's not playing that well, then he's not going to get the opportunity. Folks, they just brought him back on like a $20 million deal. Yeah. He's going to get the opportunity. And he's going to be a cornerstone of that offense, or excuse me, that defense and that secondary for the Lions. So based off of what he did last year, averaging 12.1 points per game, he wasn't DB1, but he was right there in DB2 production. Just believe in Tracy Walker. And just think about this. He's doing all this, and he's having all the success in terms of fantasy point production, being as inefficient as possible as a whole. Imagine if he gets better. I hear it's possible through coaching and studying and doing all the things that these guys do to make themselves better each and every year, that it's possible to get better. Yeah. Shock. I know. I was shocked too when I heard that too. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. Who do you got for us for another riser here, Nate?
We talked about it a little bit earlier. We mentioned the moves from team to team to team to team, and Jordan Whitehead out of Tampa, and he's with the Jets now. He felt the move to join Robert Saleh and that defense was the right fit for him. He feels that Marcus May-less role, and we saw what Marcus May could do when able to play a full 16 game schedule, which was 19 and 20. He go back to 2020. I mean, he had 88 tackles, 2 sacks, 11 passes defense, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery. Fill the stat sheet. Jordan Whitehead, by all accounts, in 59 games with the Bucs, has started 55 of them. Came out and immediately filled that role that they had. He finished 2021 with 73 tackles. He had 8 passes defense, 2 interceptions. So he's a ball hawk. He's capable of getting, behind the line of scrimmage. He last just in only 14 games last year. Mind you, that's all these numbers are. He was top 15 with 5 tackles for a loss. And you just combine this playmaking skill set that he has. I think the Jets are a much worse offense than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know that's probably going out on a really, really tight limb that I just did, but I do believe the Jets offense will not be Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, meaning I think Marcus May will see, an increase of snaps on the defensive side of the ball. Is that too much of a stretch to go into, do you believe?
You mean Jordan Whitehead?
Who did I say?
Marcus May.
Well, Marcus May will probably play less. But yeah, Jordan Whitehead, that's what I was talking about. Boy, I was looking at Marcus May's stats to make sure I got those right. But yeah, Jordan Whitehead, I think where he's at, I think the move might seem insignificant to some, but I liked him anyway. And this is just going to help me push him up my draft board just even further.
And Robert Saleh, this guy, when he was in San Francisco, I mean, you want to talk about dialing up pressures. Like I could see Whitehead just playing, that hashtag tackle machine role, whether it's closer to the line of scrimmage or being right there in the middle of the field. Yeah, I'm excited about Jordan Whitehead. He definitely has the opportunity. And I agree with you wholeheartedly about the Jets. They're not there yet. So definitely the opportunity is going to be there. But you touched on a player that I'm super excited on, and I really had not a lot to go off of. Marcus May, you kind of told the story right there as far as how well he played when he was healthy. He only played in 6 games last year, and it was his contract year, which, of course, fantasy managers and Jets fans who were fans of Marcus May, we were like, man, we really wanted him to play a whole year. But even if he played in 6 games, he was still a dominant force in football. When you look at FIF IDP scoring and points per game, he was the DB 6 overall. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's Derwin James, Harrison Smith, Logan Ryan, Marcus May. He's right there in the top 5, top 6, excuse me. Just a lot of good play there going now to New Orleans. And so it makes me wonder, and I'll kind of segue to a faller now. What does this mean? What does this mean for Malcolm Jenkins? Strong safety there. Soon to be 35 years old. You saw a lot of tip in his production. Normally he's a big passes defense guy, likes to break up the passes. Wasn't doing that so much this past year. When you look at fantasy point scoring here, using total points scored, he was a DB 55 in 2021. DB 55.
Yeah.
To give you an idea of what that meant, in 2020, he was a DB 7 overall. So that is a huge jump in fantasy production, which corresponds, of course, to real football production. There's a lot of stuff going not in his favor. This bringing in Marcus May, although Marcus May played free safety in New York, Malcolm Jenkins played strong safety. Part of me thinks that maybe you're going to see Marcus May kind of play more of that strong safety role going forward in New Orleans, and Malcolm Jenkins, they could save some money by cutting him. So I don't know how long he's going to be there. And if they do indeed make the switch for Marcus May going over to strong safety, this could be it for Malcolm Jenkins in terms of being somebody that you want to roster in your fantasy leagues. And his value is definitely, by hook or by crook, it's declining.
Yeah, it's crazy. On the decline, when you talk about these guys that are just falling, it doesn't have to be a 35-year-old who's seeing a dip in his production based off of just, a little longer in the tooth and potentially that has its effect on everybody. Everybody's human. Some people are in their, third year of the end, or fourth year, I guess is what it is. And man, it's almost 5 years now for John Johnson III. Yeah. Long way around of saying, look, talk about how quickly the mighty have fallen. Good Lord. I mean, that was 2018. That was his second season. And he was a beast. 5th amongst all safeties in passes defended, 70 tackles, DB 5 overall using our ESPN modified IDP scoring. I mean, that was 13.5 points a game. If you put 13.5 points per game in comparison to like we were doing earlier with the correlation between the wide receiver position in a half-point PPR scoring, just to put him on the same bar, that at 13.5, he would have been the wide receiver 10. He would have been on par with Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, the Mike Evans of the world. I'd say Julio Jones, but that doesn't exactly elicit well thoughts, but that was from the 2020 season. We'll say when, go back to last year, there's a little bit better names across that, but yeah, we've seen John Johnson. We thought, man, look at the Rams. They really just absolutely stole him. And then now this even more subsequent switch over to Cleveland. It hasn't been exactly a prosperous one. Yeah. I mean, he was the defensive back 41 to put it into perspective. Now he still averaged 11 points per game, which is one of the things about defensive backs in all scoring formats. The variance between like from 2020 where he was at 11 to 7.9 in 2021, you see that's only about 3 points per game separation. That difference took him from the defensive back 41 down to the defensive back 131. So, I mean, only 3 points, but that separates, almost 90 spots worth. It is 90 spots in math. Good job. Look at that. No calculator even. Nope. Hands.
After 10 p.m. too. Look at you. That's your.
I know. It's not for me. It's 9:49 here. So,
well, whatever. Take the compliment. It's fine.
Exactly. Fair enough. I don't think many people are going to argue that if having to choose a defensive back in their dynasty drafts, John Johnson isn't going to be near the top of that list. Some might say, let's give him another chance. We'll see what happens as a result. But I'm not buying.
Yeah, it makes me feel like this move to Cleveland was about shoring up the secondary in Cleveland, not necessarily putting one player or a few players on a pedestal to be the guy, if you get what I'm saying.
Oh yeah,
which is not great for the John Johnson managers out there. Definitely seeing a dip in value. Before we get into another faller, let's go back to some risers here, and let's talk about cornerback now. And you last offseason when we were doing our team previews for offense and IDP, you were pretty high also in AJ Terrell. During the course of the season, we were seeing how well he was playing. He was the DB 24 in PPR in FIF scoring on the Sleeper app. Mm-hmm. He was, in terms of overall finish, according to Pro Football Focus, he was finishing as the defensive back 8. And I say defensive back, that's including cornerback and safeties. 8 overall. He was tied for 6th amongst all the defensive backs in passes defense with 16. He was the top 20 defensive back in man coverage, DB 8 when playing in zone, 81 total tackles. I mean, this guy just played lights out, and he had a missed tackle rate of 6.3%. That's ridiculously absurd. These are fantastic numbers. And, last I checked, Falcons are probably not going to be that good this year. Who do they have to throw the ball to? I don't know. I do, but I don't. You know what I mean? Like was all something Zacchaeus? Something with I don't even know. I can't even say this name. I can't even say the wide receiver's name, but you know who I'm talking about. And this, what does that mean? This means the defense is going to be there on the field a lot. My only concern, which is why I have him as a could rise in dynasty value, is, eventually coaches learn. Quarterbacks learn, offensive schemes learn that, hey, if this person on this side of the field is stopping all these passes to getting to my wide receiver, maybe I'll go on the other side of the field. Yeah. And it is that concern. Now, they just did bring in somebody in free agency who's also a top quarterback. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. Do you know who it is?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to say no, because I don't. The good news is again, I have sweet internet that tells me, oh, wait, they brought in Casey Hayward?
Casey Hayward. There we go, from the Chargers, right?
Yeah. Well, Vegas, technically. Raiders.
Sorry. Okay. But he played all those years with the Chargers. Now he's coming over from the Raiders. Okay. Well, Casey Hayward used to be really, 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 really good as a corner. Mm-hmm. So now that makes me wonder, okay, well, if he can continue being that way in Atlanta, maybe they don't shy away from Terrell. maybe the narrative is that, okay, because he's still a young player, we're still going to go after him. With a 6.3 missed tackle percent, go for it. Go after him.
Mm-hmm.
One of those instances, like a Kenny Moore. I'm not saying he's Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore is a cornerback, who is great for IDP fantasy football. Can AJ Terrell be that guy? Well, he's definitely on the path of getting that opportunity. If he continues to get that opportunity, though, is my thought there.
Yeah, and that's always that does go into the whole situation. I mean, clearly, the key for a corner to ever be significant, you can't rely on the interceptions to be. I mean, they can get sticky, but realistically, it's not the stickiest of stat. You want target volume, and with the missed target, missed tackle rate is excellent as his is. He might allow the catch, but I'll take like Kenny Moore. You talk about Kenny Moore, 125 targets last year, 125 targets. And I don't know if he's going to get 125 again, but he didn't grade out as a great corner. It's not like Kenny Moore is this fantastic shutdown. Nobody wants to attack that side of the field type position, that player. He mans the slot, and he gets a lot of, I'd say, I don't want to say junk thrown his way, but he does. He has a much more ranging area of reception, if you will. I don't know if there's a better term to say than that, but that explains it.
We'll go with it.
It could be. I mean, it could be the tight end. It could be the running back. It could be multiple different receiver sets. And he was just attacked. That just is the fact of the matter. And that's one of the reasons why I have Kenny Moore actually as one of my Dynasty risers, not because I don't think that he's already going to be decently attacked in drafts, but I think he might be the first corner actually off the board. And a lot of those things that we just talked about support that. He led corners in solo tackles, 13.4 fantasy points per game. He led corners in targets, 15th in passes defensed, third among corners with 8 pressures. Yet here's the thing. No quarterback hits. So if he still gets that same number of pressures, the law of averages would state that positive regression would be in his favor, and we should see at least a couple quarterback hits. And we know how quarterback hits affect fifth scoring. Those added, say, 4-6 points could really come in handy and could separate him from being the defensive back, 8 to being, top 5 potentially. That's how narrow that grouping can be.
No, exactly. And that's part of what makes IDP fun and also frustrating at times. Because like you said a little bit earlier, just 3 points can go a long way to offsetting where you are. So when you're assigning these risers and fallers categories, you have to really think about what you're doing here. I totally get what you're saying there on Kenny Moore. There's another player here that's a riser who John June, who's the host of the FF Diagnostics podcast. He came on. He's a huge Jets fan, by the way. So the fact that he knows this player and knew this player really well last August when we had him on Fourth and Frames, we were doing the AFC East divisional preview podcast, and we got to IDP. And so I was talking a lot about the Bills, the Poyers and the Hydes, and I was talking about, the Eric Rose and the Xavier Howards in Miami, Marcus May of the Jets. And he comes to me and he's like, so what are your thoughts on a young player by the name of Kyle Duggar? And I'm like, who? And he said, Kyle Duggar. Yeah, no, this is coming out of his rookie year. He's got some good play. Really good in college. He could potentially be taking the next step here. What are your thoughts on him? And I'm like, I have egg on my face. I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. Kyle Duggar, in his first full season as a strong safety for the New England Patriots, ranked first amongst all defensive backs in run stopping percentage, second overall in run stops. He was the DB4 in total tackles. He had a solo tackle rate of close to 10% and a total tackle rate of 12.5%. He was averaging about 12 fantasy points per game. So if I'm going to go back to drawing comparisons here to offense, let me pull up my little app here and see where 12 fantasy points per game gives me. We're talking about, again, DJ Moore, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, Hunter Renfrow, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman. I mean, solid play. Man, like this is the guy that we kind of like normally would gush about, Nate, when it comes to defensive backs. Like strong safety, plays close to the line of scrimmage, just a thumper. Is going to get to the ball carrier and make plays after play after play after play. If you go read the article over at fantasyandframes.com, which, by the way, head over to fantasyandframes.com today and read all of our Risers and Fallers articles on offense, defense, the linebacker, defensive lineman. We have all these articles here for the risers, the fallers, who could rise, who could fall, who have definitely risen and definitely fallen. You can check all that out at fantasyandframes.com today. In the article, I put in a clip where he's basically rushing through a 330-pound linebacker. Okay. I'm talking like a safety running towards a 330-pound linebacker, offensive lineman, excuse me. And completely trucked him to the ground. Like it was straight up impressive. Just on that alone, I would be like, you know what? You all can go get your Derwin Jameses and who else? I'm gonna wait for Kyle Duggar. And he played lights out, man. He played lights out. Let's get to now some rise or fallers here. This one hurts me a little bit because I was such a huge fan of his when he was in Houston. And what I liked about him the most is that he was like one of the very first safety / cornerbacks hybrids that you saw in defenses in the NFL. When you needed him to make tackles at the line of scrimmage, he was getting you that safety production, getting those tackles. When you needed him to get you those passes defense and those plays and those tackles in the secondary, he was doing that. I'm talking about Kareem Jackson. And here's the thing. Despite leading every single Bronco on defense in tackles last year, okay, he still finished as the DB 80 in points per game with an average of 9.1 and the DB 69 in fantasy points scored.
Eesh.
Ridiculous. Why? Because all the other stuff that he was really good at doing, he didn't do well anymore. Or at least he didn't do well last year.
Right.
Entering his 13th season now, it may be time to, go and say goodbye to Kareem Jackson in your IDP leagues here, just because, youth is taking over. And as much as I was a huge fan of his, I can't say that he's maybe even not worth rostering at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, he was so far off my board. Not so far. He's off. I had to drop him. He's probably around 40 right now for me. And I mean, that's draftable if you have 4 defensive back spots. But in that same breath, I'm just as likely to go with someone like maybe a Taron Johnson or even if, Marcus May is right around that same spot right now as far as early preseason rankings and maybe his spot. I'll tell you a person who I'm intrigued landing spot could be totally indicative is what Tyrann Mathieu is going to do. And I don't know. And I'm still uncertain on, Justin Reed coming over exactly if he's going to be. I don't think the role he's going to have is going to be quite the same as what Mathieu had. I think they gave Tyrann Mathieu kind of carte blanche on that defense because he was, he was the leader of the defense. He understood, he had everything ready to go and he was set in that I felt comfortable he could potentially kind of be the Swiss Army knife and do a lot of everything. I think he still has that ability wherever he goes. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And again, Matthew's 1 year older. He's heavily linked right now to the Saints, the last I saw. And I think the signing of May probably eliminates that. I think that was 10 days ago, last I heard. So since then, I haven't heard much in the market for him. But that's a could fall because landing spot could dictate a lot of that. And if the landing spot is not ideal, then I know I'm grateful for what he did for KC and love him as a real football player. But I don't know if I trust the ups and downs and ebbs and flows that he had last year in fantasy scoring. If you look at that as an overall, I mean, let's see, in our fantasy, our IDP scoring, Tyrann Mathieu on a per game, I have gotten carpal tunnel in my finger.
He got 10.2 points per game.
And he didn't appear there he is. He's 54. So outside the DB4. So yeah. I think that says a lot right there.
It does. And of course it says a lot when I'm out to say that Washington is a potential landing spot that he's been heavily linked to here in our nation's capital.
Oh, so, interesting.
Indeed.
That would be fun for you.
No more Landon Collins. We need somebody back there to help lead these gentlemen.
I would like that. Him and Cameron Curl back there would be fun to have.
Yeah, I so want Reeves though. Remember the guy who came on like the past 3 weeks of the season who just was just a tackle machine for Washington. I kind of wish he got more play this year. But if Mathieu does come over, then the leadership there I think could go a long way with helping this defense here in Washington. But
that's true. Yeah, I don't say I forgot about Jeremy Reeves, but you're right. It kind of he was after 4 years in the league, finally making a name for himself, and here Bobby McCain. What about Bobby McCain?
That's another one. But I want to say Reeves was the guy who was really taking off there towards the end of the season. So
definitely was.
But anywho, so with that, I think that's going to round out. Unless you got somebody else here, Nate.